Hey guys, Claire here, and in today's video we're going to talk about all things Harry and Meghan. Now, Prince Harry has recently been promoted to a board member of the African Park Network. Now, Harry first joined the African Parks in 2016, where he served as part of the team that assisted with the first phase of the 500 Elephants Project, which is one of the most significant elephant translocations in conservation history. So, congratulations to Prince Harry on his promotion. Now on to another one of Prince Harry's babies, aka the Archewell Foundation. The Archewell Foundation has recently supported the State of the World's Fathers 2023 report, and the official UN Women Geneva account shared the details of the report and listed Archewell as one of the generous supporters alongside Procter & Gamble and Equimundo. Now, I don't know if many of you know this, but Equimundo and Procter & Gamble have been in partnership in various capacities with Archewell since its inception. Also, it's really great that Archewell's foundation still works with the UN Women. Let's not forget that Meghan was a UN Women ambassador, so full circle moment there. Now, on to Harry's papi. King Charles and Camilla have arrived in Kenya, and I wonder if their trip will be tumultuous. Now, for the past week or two, I've been seeing a lot of little snippets from local Kenyan news sources that has shared the concerns and demands of local Kenyans.
At the same time, the Kenya Human Rights Commission is calling for apologies and adequate reparations for atrocities meted against Kenyans during the colonial rule.
The commission claims the British colonial government committed unprecedented human rights violations coupled with policing culture and land grabbing. The commission is calling for an apology from the United Kingdom government ahead of the 4-day visit by King Charles III. Ayub Abdikadir reports.
In maintaining that its reparations suit, which started in 2002 and ended up with an out-of-court settlement in 2010, and ahead of the King's 4-day visit to Kenya, a section of Gusii elders have come out to demand for justice for their sons and daughters killed during the colonial era. The Aba Gusii elders, dressed in their traditional regalia, called on the British government to bring back a skull of renowned Aba Gusii warrior Otenyo Nyamaterere, who was gruesomely beheaded by the colonialists during agitation for independence. The elders demanded for compensation in addition to public apology to those who went through untold sufferings.
People were really mistreated. They were tortured in their own motherland, and after doing nothing wrong because they were in their own country.
They came the disruption of our social structures and the social fabrics and the networks, which made people to be culturally disoriented. This disorientation has stuck with our people.
The Kenya Human Rights Commission plans on Monday to gather at the monument of freedom fighter Dedan Kimathi in memory of Kenyans who fought against the British colonial rule.
Ahead of the royals' visit, Kenyans appear to have mixed thoughts on what the historic trip means for the population.
There's nothing he's bringing. He's just coming to visit. He's wealthy. He has everything. There's nothing he's bringing to Kenya, and there's no way I'm going to benefit as a common citizen. We will just suffer economically because a lot of businesses are going to close down and roads will be blocked.
The visit slated by the leader of the Commonwealth, King of the United Kingdom, King Charles III, has elicited mixed reactions, with more pressure to have the United Kingdom offer an apology to Kenyans mounting just hours before King Charles and Queen Camilla arrive in Kenya for a week-long tour of their first tour to a Commonwealth nation. Azimio co-principal Martha Karua adding to the list of those calling for an apology for the atrocities made by Britain more than 6 decades ago, where Kenya was among its colonies.
Not just to the Mau Mau, but to the people of Kenya. I would have expected that they would have ensured the head of Koitalel Arab Samoei is brought to Kenya before they come.
Karua further remarked that the United Kingdom has continued to commit untold pain to Kenyans, even during modern times, citing the example of Agnes Wanjiru, who allegedly was murdered by a British soldier in 2012. Karua demanding for the arrest and prosecution of the army man. Wanjiro's body was found in a septic tank nearly 3 months after she had spent an evening partying with the soldiers.
Atrocities committed by the British Army during colonial period and administration, and also by their army in the time they are given training grounds in Kenya. We expect an unequivocal apology, otherwise the visit is meaningless.
Now, Lady Glenn Connor, who is a royal adjacent gossip, said that John Kerry said that Americans feel sorry for Prince Harry, which of course was a lie. And for those of you who don't know, Lady Glenn Connor was a former lady-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth's younger sister, and John Kerry is a high-ranking U.S. politician. And the interesting part of this is that the representatives for Secretary Kerry came out blazing and publicly called out the lie by the royal adjacent gossip. They insisted that Secretary Kerry had no recollection of the alleged conversation and insisted that he would not be drawn into public discussions of a private nature. The statement said, Secretary Kerry does not remember being asked that question, but as a father in the public eye himself, he has nothing but empathy for people working through a family matter who all deserve privacy and compassion. So I'm loving the fact that Secretary Kerry made sure that this lie is refuted. Well done.
King Charles and Queen Camilla have just landed in Kenya for the first visit to a Commonwealth nation of his reign. The royal family shared this glimpse inside the royal jet a few hours ago. I just love the idea of whatever social media intern got tasked with this having to tell Charles and Camilla to look like they were reading for the gram. Although I do have to say Charles' acting skills here blow Camilla's out of the water. Okay, in all seriousness though, this visit to Kenya being the first visit by King Charles, the first of his reign to a Commonwealth nation, is especially poignant because Kenya was the place that Queen Elizabeth II became monarch. This is where she learned that her father, King George VI, had passed away. So the visit is going to kind of celebrate the special tie that Kenya and the UK have for that reason, but also because this is a visit to celebrate 60 years of Kenyan independence. Independence from who, you might ask? You know the answer, the British. So yeah, it's a little bit ironic, but in modern diplomacy terms, this kind of state visit, it's nothing out of the ordinary. Close cultural ties can mean a lot of things. Now, BBC News Africa is not pulling any punches, it seems, when it comes to how they're going to report this state visit. The visit officially kicks off tomorrow, Tuesday, October 31st. It will last for 4 days. And right up top, the BBC News Africa is noting that during the time when the UK occupied Kenya, more than 10,000 people were killed in their campaign against them gaining independence. I mean, and listen, it's only fair. Other royals lately have had to deal with protests. King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima of the Netherlands were recently confronted, actually stuck inside a protest while they were visiting South Africa, which is notable because King Willem-Alexander is a monarch who has actually apologized for slavery and for his country's role in the slave trade. So, I mean, it's Charles and Camilla's turn, you know? The British royal family, as a reminder, they have not apologized for any of the things that were done in the name of Britain in the past. They've said those things were horrible and they should never have happened, but the word sorry or apologize never comes into play. And that, I think, is intentional because it opens up the door for reparations, which when we talk about these protests still happening, most often the goal of these protests is to get reparations, whether that's financial or, you know, land-based, something material, tangible, rather than just the words of, I'm sorry this happened. Like, don't get me wrong, an apology goes a long way. Acknowledging the history and the power imbalance between white European nations and their literal former colonies, like, that's step one. But often true justice isn't going to be felt until we've moved past that stage and some material reparations are made. So while activists on this trip, it seems, are going to be protesting to get an apology from Charles, I would be surprised if their demands, their wants stop there. So I hope there's some useful briefings in this binder that Charles was pretending to read for that video. I hope he's ready to handle this issue sensitively and with impact. And she's there too.
I think the British have never faced justice. That is why they still run around the world pretending to tell us what to do. You know, one of the most painful statements that I ever heard in my life was from former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, when he said that Africa is a scar on the conscience of the world. How dare he? It is because we have never asked them to answer for their atrocities. The day they do, they will know that we are truly hungry. They have never. And that is why some of us are very serious about this whole idea of reparations and proper apology. They have never apologized. The British.
Tell me how you saw the couple, because you were up and close. You were always there observing. Maybe when there were no cameras as well? Could we say that?
Yeah, there was definitely moments, especially when they were sort of going between events. There was a lot of that because they were trying so hard to sort of go to as many things as they could.
Yeah.
So it was very much the case of they'd pop in, sit and watch maybe 15, 20 minutes of things or the end, and then go dash to other places so that they could get the sort of full experience.
Support everyone.
Yeah, and I have to say their connection is undeniable. Especially I think there was such an amazing shift in sort of Harry's, like, to say effervescence is probably, it's not an overstatement, because he was, don't get me wrong, he's always so personable and absolutely lovely. He's always interacting with everybody. But when Meghan Markle arrived, he just changed and it became just even more elevated. They were so tactile. They were just happy to sort of be together, and you could just really see their connection and their bond.
Aww, that's so sweet.
That's so nice to hear.
I actually wanted to ask you whether your preconceptions about the couple were changed. What were they, and are they different now?
Yeah, I definitely think my preconception before seeing them in real life has completely shifted. I think you never know what a couple is like behind closed doors, do you? No matter who they are, every celebrity couple that ever, you think you have an idea of their relationship. But actually seeing it for real, I could not, like I said, it was undeniable. I could not fault. They just looked like two people so happily and madly in love. And I was quite taken by that.
The details in these articles made me think of Courtiers by Valentine Lowe. Why am I reading Courtiers? Because I hate myself. And I don't know, I think sometimes reading propaganda is fun and you can learn a lot from it. One of those things is how long Charles has been a wormy asshole and how long he has used the press to his advantage and to do his dirty work. For about 12 months in 1990 and 1991, Charles's private secretary was a man named Christopher Airey. There had been a lot of chaos over the last 10 years because Charles had burned through private secretaries. None of them had lasted more than a year or two. The other big problem was Charles and Diana at that point were operating under the same private secretary, and it was not working out. They did not get along. They had very different interests in what they wanted to highlight and work on. The biggest issue for Charles were scheduling conflicts, because whenever Diana did something, she got all the press and he got none of the press, and he never thought that was fair. We all know that. Airey had been a military man and he was head of the household staff, and because he had gotten them into shape, it was believed that he could get the secretary's office, the staff office, in shape. It turns out that he had absolutely no idea how to run that kind of office. He had no idea what any of Charles's charitable foundations, what anything the Prince's Trust was doing, and he seemed to have no interest in learning. His biggest accomplishment was to make everybody wear jackets to meetings. It became clear that Airey was not the right fit for this job. He was offered to move back to the household side of things, which he refused. You would think the next step would be to just fire the man, but no. An article was leaked in the Sunday Times saying that Charles was thinking about firing him and was going to fire him, putting Charles in a position where he had to fire him. But the man didn't even do it himself. He had Alan Shepard do it, who wasn't even part of his staff. He was like a board member on the trust. Who was suspected of leaking the story? Charles's next private secretary, Richard Aylard. Yeah, the guy that Charles promoted probably leaked the story that he was gonna fire Airey. Yeah, that's the guy he chose to be next. Charles doesn't want William's aide's name out there because it's not an anomaly. It is how Charles has run his office. It is how a lot of the royal family has run their offices for years, for decades. God forbid these people are held to any real scrutiny outside of what clothing they wear.
Hey,
Yeah?
Meghan and Harry are buying a house in London. Probably.
Why would they do that?
Because we miss them so much.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Because Harry really misses the UK.
Okay.
California is awful. It's terrible.
Everybody hates sunshine, low humidity, 75-degree temperatures, and going to the beach in November.
Gross, that's practically boiling.
Oh, I'm sorry, 23.889 degrees.
He needs a base in the UK.
Oh, does he? Why is that?
Because of the trial.
I thought you were going to go with that because he's an advisor to the Crown. He is legally required to have housing in the UK provided by, the Crown. Anyway, it doesn't make sense. She and the kids haven't set foot in the country for 4 years. Their security can't properly keep them safe without cooperation from the Met Police, which, they don't have. Charles took that away and won't give it back. Plus, you guys would find them in like 2 seconds flat. And after New York, I think we all know how you want that to end. So, please, tell me why they should move back.
We missed them.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So Chuck and Willie were horrible the day that Harry asked the Queen, his grandma, for permission to marry Meghan.
And Willie had already warned me not to do it. It's too fast, he told me. Too soon. In fact, he'd actually been pretty discouraging about me even dating Meg. One day, sitting together in his garden, he predicted a host of difficulties I could expect if I hooked up with an American actress, a phrase he always managed to make sound like convicted felon. Are you sure about her, Harold? I am, Willie. But do you know how difficult it's going to be? What do you want me to do? Fall out of love with her? Pa, driving us out into the fields, asked about Meg, not with great interest, just casually. Still, he didn't always ask, so I was pleased. She's good, thanks. Does she want to carry on working? Say again. Does she want to keep on acting? Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I expect she'll want to be with me, doing the job, which would rule out Suits since they film in Toronto. I see. Well, darling boy, there's not enough money to go around. I stared. What was he banging on about? He explained, or tried to. I can't pay for anyone else. I'm already having to pay for your brother and Catherine. I flinched. Something about his use of the name Catherine. I remembered the time he and Camilla wanted Kate to change the spelling of her name because there were already 2 royal ciphers with a C and a crown above. Charles and Camilla. It would be too confusing to have another. Make it Catherine with a K, they suggest. I wondered now what came of that suggestion. They turned to Willie, gave him a look that said, "You listening to this?" His face was blank.
Okay, so this reminds me of some headlines at the time. Just a quick pause here. This is not from Harry's book. This hit the press, and I wasn't quite sure about it. I didn't know at the time because, remember, I was a fan, for those of you who know. I was, a fan of hers for a minute because of the image that they had crafted for her, right? But go ahead and pause if you want to read it. But what stood out to me was that her friends, those on the receiving end of her email, and maybe they were press. Maybe it was her friends in the press. I don't know. And that's it. Okay, back to Harry.
Pa didn't financially support Willie and me and our families out of any largesse. That was his job. That was the whole deal. We agreed to serve the monarch, go wherever we were sent, do whatever we were told, surrender our autonomy, keep our hands and feet inside the gilded cage at all times, and in exchange, the keepers of the cage agreed to feed and clothe us. Was Pa, with all his millions from the hugely lucrative Duchy of Cornwall, trying to say that our captivity was starting to cost him a bit too much? Besides which, how much could it possibly cost to house and feed Meg? It was suddenly clear to me that this wasn't about money. Pa might have dreaded the rising cost of maintaining us, but what he really couldn't stomach was someone new dominating the monarchy, grabbing the limelight. Someone shiny and new coming in and overshadowing him, and Camilla. He'd lived through that before and had no interest in living through it again. I couldn't deal with any of that right now. I had no time for petty jealousies and palace intrigue. I was still trying to work out exactly what to say to Granny.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, hit that notification bell.